What's up, wizards? It's Dev, SBMTG. We like it on Magic, especially on days like this. Mama said there'd be days like this, only in the good way, like you want, because I finally get to do it after what feels like years of threatening it. Let's do the top 10 Homelands cards. Baby, let's go. And I'm your favorite Magic Channel's favorite Magic Channel. Best believe that the professor go bananas for my deck tech. And we are back. In case you can't tell, I am more jacked for this one than I've been for a video in a while. You know, I have a history of defending sets that nobody else likes. Looking at you, Strixhaven, and today I get to do the ultimate iteration of that, so I'm really happy. Especially since this time, I know I'm right. Why are you booing me? Homelands may have been the butt of a lot of jokes over the last quarter of a century plus here. It's kind of the cousin you don't talk to from the old school blocks. It's one of those, but I think that attitude has caused a lot of people to not even really bother looking at Homelands over the last 25 years, and I think that's a massive mistake, because once you actually do get looking through this set from an EDH player's perspective, you might be, no, you will be, I'm going to put a guarantee on it, surprised by some of the power that lies within this set. I hope I can convince you all once and for all that Homelands is actually a decent set. Maybe by the end of this video, it'll finally get the respect it deserves. Probably not. It's actually not a very good set, but there are at least 10 cards in it that I think are more than worth pointing out. So let's go. Let's start with the honorable mention, which is a little bit different this time, because if you know me like at all, my honorable mention is usually a bad card that I spend half the time justifying to only myself and not convincing anyone about, and then the other half of the time just admitting that it's kind of a bad card and it's just goofy and I like it. But this one is a little bit different, it actually has some real power behind it. This is just kind of number 11 on the list. Our honorable mention this time is Wall of Kelp. Hey, hold on. Don't walk away yet. I know that this looks like the memest card from the memest set. Is that why it's the honorable mention, Dev? No, I'm actually not pulling your leg. This card has some real potential, and there's at least one awesome thing you can do with it. Now, if you've never seen this, and why would you have? It's just 2 blue mana for a 0/3 wall. I know I'm not wowing anybody yet, but you can pay its casting cost again, right? Pay 2 blue and tap it, and create a 0/1 kelp. Note that the Oracle text on this, by the way, says that it creates a 0/1 blue plant creature, the half relevant creature type, and its name is Kelp, which I actually think is like way cuter. Like, its name is Kelp. So why is this card $3.50 when it doesn't look very good at all? In fact, I mean, it's be hard to pitch this one to you, right? Actually, there's an easy way to pitch this one to you. That's just to remind you that Intruder Alarm exists. You see, if you haven't spotted it yet, the way Intruder Alarm works, whenever you activate the ability on Wall of Kelp, you make a guy. Dude came into play, untap all the guys. Now I have all my activated abilities back, including Wall of Kelp. I can tap down all my mana dorks and stuff like that and do broken stuff, my Royal Assassin. I don't know what you're into. And then you just make another Kelp with Wall of Kelp and repeat the process. It actually seems like pretty powerful. I know. Any dude that like taps to make a creature can do that with Intruder Alarm, so you know you have options, but Wall of Kelp is actually one of the cooler ones, and I think that style points matter. But let's hit the list, everybody. The actual thing, number 10, is Pharaoh's Ban. Yeah, I know, it got 6 mana, but in case you haven't actually looked at the text box yet, pretty useful text box for some decks. Creature spells cost 2 more to play. Now, the problem is it costs 6 to get into play. That's always been the issue with Pharaoh's Ban, is that they have all the good creatures in play by the time you can play this, but there's plenty of ways to cheat this out in terms of just cards that like switch artifacts in your yard for artifacts in play. I don't know, what do you welder this in play? That's a way to go. But still, if you can get this into play relatively early, it's going to screw everybody up. Now, the thing is, you don't play a bunch of creatures, but everybody else at the commander table probably does. So if, again, you get this out early enough, whether, again, it's through like cheating it into play through some sort of manipulation, or maybe you just have a bunch of artifact ramps, Soul Ring, Basalt Monolith, play with Pharaoh's Ban on turn 2 or something like that, just make it work. Really, in commander decks that just don't have a lot of creatures to begin with, but also, again, have access to all that artifact ramp and stuff like this, this is almost a free include, right? Because it's not really messing you up that much. Now, you are playing a commander, I would assume. Maybe you're playing one of the Planeswalker commanders. That keeps you from having to play so many creatures. We can make this work. I'm theory crafting it live in video, but all I'm saying is this card sparks ideas, and that's important. That's a good, when a card does that, it's good. And finally, just one more thing on this card I should probably at least mention in passing is that it's only like 30 cents right now, so you're not going to like miss your rent payment building around this thing. It's a pretty cool card that I've always liked, and look, I'm going to say everything I want to about cards in this video because I'm probably never going to get to talk about Homelands again, and I've been wanting to do this video for literally years, so you're probably going to have to put up with stuff like, I really like this art. That's just, I'm excited to talk about this set. Bear with me. But I'm going to force myself to move along here to number 9 and take a look at Truce. This is only about $1 right now, and a lot of sellers actually have it listed at like 65 cents. Really cheap to pick up a copy of this, and it's neat. It's white card draw. Remember when that was actually like impressive? Over the last couple of years, every white card draws cards. They used to actually matter when white cards drew cards. This costs 3 mana, 2 and a white at instant speed, and each player draws up to 2 cards. But for each card they didn't elect to draw, they gain 2 life. It feels like every time I do one of these like old set top 10 for Commander video things, which I do a surprising amount of actually, there's always one like group hug card on the list, and this is this list's entry. Saving grace about this card is that it's instant speed, so you just cast it like the end of the player to your left's turn, right? And that way you can just draw the 2. I really don't think anybody's going to be gaining life off of this unless they're playing life gain. Hey, free life gain proc effects, that's kind of cool. Maybe that's why you play it in your life gain deck, but you know, I get life gain triggers on like 3 guys, and then everybody else draws 2. That's not, doesn't seem right, but you could play it in life gain if you wanted to. But again, this is way more suited to these kind of group hug decks that don't mind these symmetrical draw effects, and nobody wants to kill that guy because he's letting everybody draw cards and do fun stuff. And I like to be that guy. I like when people get to do fun stuff, and I like when people don't want to kill me because I'm letting them do fun stuff. Politics are important in Commander. And so I'm a big fan of these kinds of like foggy on occasion, right? But just ultimately huggy decks. So I'm a big fan of this card too. I think a one of goes in basically every group hug deck that has access to white, which is basically every group hug deck. You know what's funny about this list is that it is mostly comprised of cards that I never really played back in the day, and some of which I hadn't really heard of, and that's a guy that really likes Homelands. But I'm like, what is this? I got to read this. Oh, it's really good. Holy crap. Why does nobody know about this card? But number 8, a little bit different. This card I actually did play a lot with back in the day. I loved it back then, and I think it still has an argument all the way up to 2023 and beyond if you're watching this in the future. This video is evergreen. This card is going to be Syndra Autocrat. 4 mana is a lot, right? I'm not going to lie, but this does put 4 bodies on the table. You know, we're looking at Wall of Kelp a minute ago, and that's puts a body on the table every turn. I really shouldn't compare. You know what? This is good. It's better than a Wall of Kelp. That's not a very good baseline, Dev. But still, a little board in a box on this. We used to play it with Bad Moon back in the day, and it put a buttload of power on the table for just 4 mana. We were having a good time. And we also used to use it with sacrifice effects, which is where I think it's probably going to be used the most often nowadays. Way back in the day, we used to just throw these things under an Ashnod's altar and get 6 quick mana, basically pay ourselves back for the Syndra Autocrat, plus interest, like immediately. But nowadays, it turns out you still do that, and it's still a pretty decent play. Aristocrats decks in Commander are always looking for fodder, and again, a dude that just puts 4 bodies on the table, at least 3 of which you really don't care about whatsoever. They just go right into the pit, you know, like that's actually always going to be a pretty valuable card, especially considering 4 mana is nowhere near as much as it is in other formats, right? In Commander, 4 mana, what is it? That's a fart. Who cares, you know? So 4 mana isn't as much as it seems like. And again, getting this huge board in a box, just 4 dudes in one, that is really, really valuable for a lot of decks right now. So take a look at Syndra Autocrat. This thing is really cheap to buy right now. But let's move on to number 7, which is actually the beginning in this video of a nice little creature type thematic arc, because Homelands actually, this is something else it doesn't get enough credit for. It actually has a bunch of different creature types in it that were, especially at the time, a little bit off kilter. And we're going to go ahead and talk about some of those right now. Number 7 is Minotaur stuff, especially Didgeridoo, which if you didn't know is the most expensive card in the set. The market price on this thing right now is like $15, and copies sell for around $10 moderately played, at a pretty good clip. A lot of people that don't know about too many cards from Homelands at least know about this one. If you're a Commander player that wants to play Minotaurs because you're cool, you kind of need a copy of this. It's just a 1 mana artifact. For 3 mana, you can just throw a Minotaur from your hand onto the table. So again, with all the artifact ramp and stuff like that, awesome. Also fixes your mana. You can play whatever Minotaur you want for just 3 mana. Sometimes that means ramping like 5 and 6 mana Minotaurs into play and stuff. So you want to throw a Fire Song and Sunspeaker down? Aren't they Minotaurs? I'm not really sure. I'm pretty sure they are. But one way or the other. There's a lot of cool stuff you can do with the Didgeridoo, whether it's playing multiple Minotaurs in a turn or cheating Minotaurs out in the early game. So Didgeridoo, probably actually like the best creature type relevant card in the entire set and probably this whole video. But there's also a Naba Spirit Crafter, right? This is a little bit more boring, but at least it's an anthem effect for all your Minotaurs, and that means a lot. Even Spirit Crafter is like kind of expensive for this set. It's 10 times less than a Didgeridoo, but that still puts it at about $1.50 for a guy that just boosts all your Minotaurs. But again, you're playing Minotaurs in Commander. This is basically a must include. So if you didn't know about the card and you wanted to build Minotaurs, I guess this is relevant information to you. Jeff, there's like 4 guys that care about that at all. But to those 4 people, it's like really important information. So I hope I helped. Susan, I'm just guessing names at this point. Eventually I'll get one right, but let's move on to number 6. Again, more creature type stuff. Let's talk about the birds, which is what everyone called the birds deck back in the day because people were still culturally aware of the Hitchcock film. I'm not sure they still are, but there's a bunch of good bird stuff in this set. It turns out people like birds, and the people that make Homelands were like, hey, people like birds, let's give them some stuff. So they gave us Soraya the Falconer to start. Now, just so you know, this is another one that's received some errata in the Oracle text. Basically all your birds. It's all the birds get the bonus, you see, instead of like falcons, because that would be stupid. So it's all birds now, which makes Soraya the Falconer actually a pretty nifty little bird commander if that's what you want to be doing. Also, the reason I get to wear the Quailman shirt today. So thanks, Soraya. I knew that you would eventually do something cool for me. I tried to play you way back in the day a bunch of times. You're always like kind of bad. But honestly, on the commander table, that's where cards like this belong, along with Sarah Aviary, which is kind of the same thing. It's just like harder to remove. This also gives sort of an anthem-y effect to all of your birds, but it gives it to all of the birds on the table. Hopefully that doesn't come back to bite you in the beak or anything like that, but hopefully people don't have a bunch of birds. You're the only one with birds, at which point the card's okay. It's a 4-mana anthem effect. I'm not going to tell you it's good, but it's at least worth looking at in your birds deck. But let's look at number 5. This is going to complete the creature type cinematic universe arc here. And we're going to do so with fairies, which is by far the most relevant creature type to this day, and one would assume we're about to get a bunch of new fairies in Wilds of Eldraine, so these cards might get even more relevant. Stuff like Willow Priestess, which is awesome, first of all, could get way more pricey in the coming days, and it's already at a market price of about $650, which is like really expensive for a card from this set. Now, Priestess is a 4-mana 2/2, not super good, but you can tap it to just throw a fairy from your hand into play. It's kind of like Didgeridoo, right? But in some ways better, in some ways worse, right? But just being able to throw a fairy down for a tap is not too bad. And it's even got an ability that is a little pricey at 2 and a green, but it protects any green creature from black until end of turn. That means, they try to fire off a Doom Blade and you got some extra mana laying around, you can say no, friend. So that's a pretty cool card right there. But there's more than that. There's also Fairy Noble in this set. If you haven't noticed, this is my sly attempt to put more than 10 cards at a top 10 list. I always find a way, but that also means that we were able to find like 15 cards in Homelands worth bringing up, which I think is kind of a miracle. But I think this card is, again, at least worth mentioning, right? This is 3 mana for a 1/2 flyer, and it gives all of your fairies +0/+1, so like a toughness anthem. But if you tap it, it gives all your fairies +1/+0 till end of turn. So this is just an all-around anthem. On most turns, it's just gonna tap. It can also take opponents by surprise on their turn, though, if they just forget about it, and they probably will because they've never seen this card in their life. What's that over there? Who cares? But they're just gonna swing in forgetting that you can effectively at instant speed just boost all your fairies' power, which I think is an important thing to be able to do when it comes to like combat math and blocking and stuff. So just again, a cool all-around card. You're going to be boosting mostly flyers power and toughness with this card, which I think matters a bit too. There's just a lot of stuff to like about a fairy anthem effect for only a few mana. So cool dude here. He's just like $1.50 to pick up. That's way cheaper, and I think he's definitely worth it. But for number 4, what if I told you that black had a propaganda effect? And we know that these effects are pretty good, right? Propaganda, Ghostly Prison, these are playable commander cards. And you may not have known that black had one, or maybe you did and you just liked that I reminded you of Koskan Falls. Now, I will say most propaganda effects are like 50 cents to a couple of bucks, right? But this thing right here is $8, and that's because, black doesn't get a whole lot of propaganda effects, and this is the only time this card's really been printed. So with that in mind, what does this actually do? Because it's propaganda, but technically worse with more steps. It costs 4 mana instead of the 3, 2 and 2 black. And you have to tap a dude down every turn, or you have to get rid of the Koskan Falls. It kind of sucks if you're also playing wrath effects and stuff in your deck. But again, worth it, I think, for a black propaganda. The rest of the text on the card is just, hate to say this so many times, propaganda, right? A creature can't attack you unless they pay 2 for that creature attacking you. So we know, again, that we have, by experience, we know that this is a pretty good effect. And it's kind of surprising that we don't see this more often on commander tables. I never see it talked about. It's kind of amazing because, like, it is a good card from Homelands. I'm telling you, it's the Homelands effect. We're going to coin that term right now. Just people think this set sucks, and so they don't bother looking through it, and they just don't see that cards like this exist and are awesome. But honestly, I am getting really worked up in this one so far. I think I need to calm down for a second, right? Get the blood pressure to push down a bit, maybe take a seat, and have myself a little coffee break. This week on the coffee break, we'll be talking about cards that used to matter. Although it is true that even back in the mid-90s, players stuck a red clown nose directly upon Homeland's face as soon as it was born into the world, there were still cards back then that mattered, but do not matter anymore. It makes me sad, but I want to give these cards a proper burial. When the set first came out, both Autumn Willow and Baron Syndra were touted by all of the magazines at the time as the best cards in the entire set, mostly because one of them had Syndra in their name, and the other had an admittedly powerful effect that we had never seen before. Autumn has her place in Magic history because her ability would eventually be keyworded into Shroud, which would even more eventually be obsoleted by the Hexproof ability. On top of that, it has always been bad to pay 6 mana for a 4/4, so Autumn Willow has not been an important card in quite some time, and although it pains me to say it, she may have never been an important card. But we all loved her, just as much as we did Baron Syndra, and sometimes we love the Baron even more. But that does not mean that he is a good card. He is in fact a terrible card. Another card that we thought was relevant back in the day was Aaron the Relentless, who we compared to a ball lightning because we were silly. We didn't know any better because it was the mid-90s, and we didn't have enough frames of reference. However, Aaron the Relentless was probably also never quite good, although he is undeniably the most handsome person in the set. Finally, one of the only cards with true constructed relevance back in the day from this set was Serrated Arrows, mostly because of a rule that made it so that you had to play at least X number of cards from every set in your standard deck. So Serrated Arrows was in many a sideboard back in the day. However, as soon as this short-lived rule was thrown out, so was Serrated Arrows, along with the entirety of Homelands, relegated to the trash pit of history. However, just like the rest of us, these cards were once very good at what they did. I have sympathy for that, so I wanted to do my part in extending their legacy as long as possible. They do all suck though. Here's Dev. Hey, we're back. You ready for number 3? Yeah, I'm not like singing a song when you come back to me or anything. I'm sorry, I'm not doing a bit. I know that probably disappoints you, but hopefully I can make up for that with number 3, which is Primal Order. You ever heard of this card? Have you read it yet? No? Okay, it costs 4 mana, 2 and 2 green for an enchantment, and it does a damage to each player during their upkeep for each non-basic land they control. You want to play some green burn in Commander? Hey, you playing CEDH with a bunch of people with $5,000 decks? Want to throw this on the table and see how mad they get? They'll get very mad. Meanwhile, I'm just playing with forests. Why are you mad at me? All I got is forests. You're the one that put those lands in your deck. That's your problem. That's your fault. You just need to hold yourself accountable. Maybe some self-reflection from time to time. I'm just playing Magic cards. It's like the only thing Inquest Magazine ever got right. If you're a youngin' or a new one, Inquest Magazine was a magazine that was pretty much wrong all the time. Way back in the day when magazines were still a thing. You guys remember magazines? They still try to sell them at the Kroger. I don't think anybody buys them, but one way or the other. It wasn't very good in terms of actual strategy, although they presented themselves as though they were. That's probably my main inspiration, to be honest. But in any case, they thought that Primal Order was like the number 2 or 3 card in the set. And honestly, they were as close to right as they've ever been. I haven't even really said that much about this card during this entry, but it's because I don't have to. It kind of speaks for itself, This is pretty obviously a powerful text box. Instead, I get to use the time allotted for this entry talking about Inquest, which makes me happy. Anytime I get to do that, I'm a happy dude. But let's move on to number 2, the only card from the entire set you already knew existed. It's Merchant Scroll, but maybe the spicy take here is that it's not my number 1, but one way or the other, this is a 2 mana blue tutor. That's very good. It's undeniably awesome, so it has to be in the top 3. Who cares about the sorcery speed? It's a demonic tutor, but it's blue, but not really. Is this just like is Solve the Equation just this card, but it costs 1 more mana? I guess that makes Solve the Equation look better or Merchant Scroll look worse. I'm not really sure which one, but Merchant Scroll is $3.50 for a reason. It turns out that like 2-mana tutors in Commander are always going to be pretty valuable. So what then is the number one card in Homelands, Dev? If it's not the one card whose existence everyone is already aware of, what is it? Well, it's actually, in a twist, a card whose existence almost no one is aware of. Have you ever read Mystic Decree? I don't blame you if you haven't. This has only ever been printed in Homelands and a Magic Online only set, but that doesn't really count. So the only paper set it's ever been printed in is this one set. It's all the way down at like $1.65 for this, but this is again just an undeniably powerful text box for 4 mana, 2 and 2 blue. You get an enchantment. All creatures lose flying and island walk. Sometimes the best effects in Commander are these like huge, balmy effects that do something to the entire table, and honestly, losing flying by itself, that's pretty good, man. Like, obviously, I don't have to tell the old school people, but I'm sure there's some young guns in here. Island Sanctuary combos pretty well with this because Island Sanctuary says they can only really attack you with stuff that has flying and island walk, whereas this makes all the stuff lose flying and literally a tailor-made Island Sanctuary combo from back in the day. And still, nobody ever really talked about this card, even though Island Sanctuary was an important card back in the day, and these are just peanut butter and ladies, you know? So just a great little combo there. At least try and do that. But even if you're not Island Sanctuarying people, you can also combo this with Moat, by the way. It's like only creatures with flying can attack. Now they all lose flying. You can't get attacked for the rest of the game. Everybody hates you. Just counter the stuff that would remove either of these enchantments, and you feel pretty good about yourself. And everybody else hates you. You won't have any friends. But that's okay. Right? It's probably not, but in any case, I'm just here to give you powerful cards from this set. And through a Commander lens, at the very least, I don't think there is a more powerful card in this set than one that makes everything lose one of the most important keyword abilities in the game. And they also lose flying as well, so pretty good card right there. I just think, again, this is a bomb of a text box for absolutely no one to ever be mentioning, and I'm going to blame it on the Homelands effect one more time. I really think it's a real thing. If you guys were actually looking through Homelands, we found some pretty slick stuff, and I think Mystic Decree is the best of all of them. Now, I hate to say it, but I think that's it. I've been waiting for like 4 years to do the Homelands video, and now it's over. Did I say everything I wanted to say? Probably not. Maybe I'll just do a top 10 more Homelands cards, because I think you could probably find at least 3 more cards. Top 3 more Homelands cards. I really don't know that I can find 10, but all I'm saying is, not just with this set, but with other sets that maybe you've heard some bad stuff about, maybe just go to Scryfall, you know, filter by that set and see what there is to offer, because there's a lot of decent stuff in this set. And some of the prices reflect that, and some of them really don't. Aside from that, I just put out a video on the Pokemon channel. If you're interested in that, it's strictly Better Pokemon TCG here on YouTube. I put out a video about the top 3 budget decks for new players. They're all under $20, and they're all, I think, worth ordering in paper if you want your first paper TCG deck for the Pokemon. But for first paper Pokemon deck for the TCG is what I meant to say. Switched it around. Anyway, I'm keeping it. Who cares? So let's just get to the couch card of the day, because I know you want to know what we're pulling. I'm trying to get like under here and snag something. Let's see what we got. Oh, it's a bad card. It's so bad. We haven't pulled a bad card in a while, right? We got like Lawnmower Elves. I think the last kind of bad card we got was Wittigo, but at least Wittigo has like history. It's a cool Ice Age card. This time we got Scab Wrangler. We got a Scab Wrangler. What does that do? It costs 1 and a blue for a 2/1 human wizard. Tap 3 untapped creatures you control to tap target creature. I guess maybe in limited with Decayed, you tap your Decayed guys to tap a dude down, so it's blue removal on a 2/1 body for 2 mana. It's still bad. That's probably the worst card we've ever pulled off the couch. I'm sorry. It's Homeland, so I guess it makes sense. Even the couch clowns on Homelands. Ridiculous. But let me know how you felt about all the stuff down there in the comments section. If you have any sort of like wacky off the wall sleeper cards from Homelands that I didn't bring up here, please, by all means, let me know about those down there in the comments section, and the rest of the world for that matter, because the whole world is watching this video. Can you imagine if this is the one that blew up and went viral? Top 10 Homelands? Who knows? But make it happen. Share the video around, blah, blah, blah. Put it on Reddit. Every time I try to put a video on Reddit, Reddit takes it down. Like, you're a content creator. I'm like, all the other content creators put their content on Reddit. What's wrong? So yeah, somebody try to put this on Reddit and see what happens. I'm interested. But anyway, I think that's all I've got for this one. I'm really holding on to this video. I do not want to be done with the top 10 Homelands cards, because then I have to be forever. And then what's the point of my life? You know what I mean? So, but I'll be back soon enough with another crappy old school top 10 or something. I tend to do these right before new sets come out. There's a reason for that. These are my favorite videos to do, right? So when I'm trying to fill a hole in the schedule, it's like, well, let's just pick an old set and do a top 10. So I have fun. I hope you did too. But anyway, I got to be done now. If you're still here, that's freaking amazing. But anyway, I'll catch you cats later. I am Deb from The Place. Thanks for watching, Wizards. Spread love and be kind.